The winter of 1944 pressed down on Europe like a great unyielding hand. Snow blanketed the Ardennes forest, muffling the distant thunder of artillery and swallowing the last traces of color from the world. For soldiers on both sides of the war, the cold was as much an enemy as the men they were ordered to fight. In a small, half-destroyed Belgian village, two young soldiers, one American, one German, found themselves trapped by a blizzard that neither army had anticipated. 1. The American Private Daniel Carter had been in Europe for only 4 months. He was 20 years old, with a face that still held traces of boyhood. His unit had been scattered during a German counterattack, and he'd been running through the forest for hours, clutching his rifle and praying he wouldn't freeze before he found shelter. When he stumbled into the ruins of a farmhouse, he collapsed against the wall, breath steaming in the frigid air. The roof was half gone, but the stone wall still stood. It was enough. He wasn't alone. The German Lieutenant Emil Weber had been sitting by the remains of a fireplace, feeding it scraps of wood and broken furniture. He was 23, older in years but far older in experience. He had seen the Eastern Front, the retreat through Poland, the slow collapse of everything he once believed was unshakable. When the American burst in, Emil reached for his pistol. Daniel raised his rifle. For a long moment, neither moved. The wind howled through the broken windows, and the fire crackled weakly between them. Finally, Emil lowered his weapon first. "You freeze out there," he said in accented English, "or you sit. Your choice." Daniel hesitated. His training screamed at him. But the cold was merciless, and the German's eyes held no malice, only exhaustion. He sat. 3. The fire between them. They didn't speak for a long time. The fire was small, barely enough to warm their hands. Daniel watched the flames dance and tried to ignore the pounding of his heart. "You speak English well," Daniel finally said. Emil shrugged. "My mother was a teacher," she insisted. Daniel nodded. "My mother insisted I learn piano." Didn't stick. A faint smile tugged at Emil's mouth. "War changes what matters." They shared a silence that wasn't hostile, just heavy with the weight of things neither wanted to say. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, two enemies sat shoulder to shoulder, bound by the simple human need to survive the night. 4. Stories in the dark as the hours passed. The fire grew dimmer and the cold crept closer. To stay awake, they talked. Daniel spoke of his home in Ohio, of fishing with his father and sneaking out to meet a girl he'd been too shy to kiss. Emil told him about his younger sister, Lotta, who loved to paint flowers on the walls of their house even when their mother scolded her. They laughed quietly at small memories, the kind that felt like they belonged to another lifetime. At one point, Daniel asked, "Do you ever think about what happens after all this?" Emil stared into the fire. "If I think too much, I lose hope. But yes, I dream of going home, of rebuilding, of peace," and Daniel nodded. "Me too. 5. Dawn and duty." When dawn finally broke, pale and cold, the storm had passed. The world outside was silent, untouched, as if the war had paused for a single night. Both men knew what came next. They stood, gathering their weapons. The warmth of the fire had faded, replaced by the chill of reality. "We go separate ways," Emil said. Daniel swallowed. "If we meet again," Emil finished for him. "We will be soldiers again." They shook hands, firm, human, reluctant. Then they stepped out into the snow, walking in opposite directions, leaving 2 sets of footprints that slowly drifted over with fresh flakes. 6. The battle 2 days later, the war found them again. Daniel's unit clashed with German forces near the same village. Bullets tore through the air and the forest echoed with shouts and explosions. Daniel fired, moved, ducked, repeated. His breath came in sharp bursts. He didn't think. There was no time to think. Then he saw him. Emil across the battlefield leading a small group of soldiers. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Recognition. Shock. Something like sorrow. A shell exploded nearby, throwing Daniel to the ground. When he looked up again, Emil was gone. 7. The final encounter, the battle raged for hours. By afternoon, the German line began to collapse. Daniel moved through the smoke-filled woods, searching for survivors, when he heard a faint groan. He found Emil lying against a tree, wounded, his uniform torn and blood staining the snow.